What's your current persona in meetings? Are you more of a wallflower and try to keep the peace and agree with people? More on the quiet side, but not because you want to give others the opportunity, but because you don't feel comfortable? Or are you the bull in China shop, bulldozing your way through the conversations? Or maybe you're someone in the middle, you're trying to find that perfect balance, which I know I was. I was the quiet type, and I knew that I had to talk more, I had to contribute more, and I had a hard time doing it back in my early career. So, on today's episode of the Speak Your Mind Unapologetically podcast, we're going to talk more about the different communication styles when it comes to expressing yourself in meetings and how to do so to express your thoughts, perspectives, ideas, and seek clarity. And we are here to help you speak up courageously and effectively so that you can not only have a more impact, but also be a better leader and advance your career. And today we're going to dive into a specific part of interactions in the workplace, which is sharing your perspective, your thoughts, your ideas, and seeking clarification assertively in meetings, big meetings and small meetings, one-on-one meetings. And we're going to talk about what that looks like for the three most common communication styles that we see a lot happening, which is the passive, the nice person, agreeable people pleaser, the aggressive, which is more dominant, and the assertive. And we're also going to explore how we can shift towards more assertive communication in these meetings. Let's talk about what communicating your perspectives and ideas looks like for the three communication styles. The first one is the passive communicator. That's you if you are the nice person, you are very agreeable, you like to please, you want validation, you want people to like you. So picture this. You're in a meeting, you're sitting quietly in a corner. Maybe this is a big meeting, and you're carefully listening because you believe that others have more important things to offer. So it's better to listen because also your ideas are not fully formulated just yet. Or maybe because you just joined the company, or maybe there are more senior people in the room. And so you believe it's your place to listen and to be humble. So you don't share your ideas as much. And when you do speak, you have a hard time making yourself heard, making your voice heard. People don't quite pay attention to you. And then maybe because of that, sometimes you feel a little bit annoyed, a little bit bored in meetings. Maybe you get stuck in your own thoughts and are not able to really bring them forward in the right time. Maybe you feel ignored. People don't really make eye contact with you. They don't reference things that you say, and you avoid being controversial. You avoid disagreement, and you also hesitate to ask questions because you worry that people might think that you look stupid if you ask a question, and then later someone asks that same question and everybody thinks it's a great question. Or you're hesitant to share an idea, and then someone shares that idea and you're like, oh my gosh, that was my idea. I wasn't so sure about it, but it seems like people liked it. Maybe you agree a lot in most of the time. That's probably because you lean towards a more passive communication style, which is something that's natural. I also lean to passive communication style. And I had to work on that to be able to be more assertive and feel more confident in myself and in the value of what I had to share. On the other end is the aggressive, the dominant, the controlling communicator. And you probably can think of some of those. There's always some of those in meetings. There are the people who love to dominate the conversation. They talk more than anybody else. They're interrupting everybody else all the time. Their tone could be harsh. Sometimes the remarks have certain accusations. When other people make comments, they make them feel bad about it, or they might ridicule them. They love a good debate, but not necessarily with the objective of resolving problems, but because they love the thrill of disagreement. They love that. And they don't really listen to other people's opinions that much because they're really focused on their own. Especially people who are more quiet, who hold less power, they really don't pay a lot of attention. Now, they get things done. They feel like they're getting things done. They feel like they're bringing a lot to the table. They feel like they're contributing a whole lot, but it leaves other people feeling unheard and can create an environment that feels a little bit hostile. Okay, so those are the two extremes. Let's talk about the middle, the golden middle. It's all about being assertive, the assertive communicator. The assertive communicator will actively contribute to discussions. They are going to share their perspectives freely, and they value their own ideas, and they value other people's ideas equally. They balance the speaking and listening based on the situation. Of course, it depends if you're the most senior person in the room, or if you're junior, or what your role is, if you're leading the meeting, or what you're bringing to the table. They generally maintain a friendly tone. They're not held back by fear. They're comfortable with disagreement. They ask uncomfortable questions when they want to know something or when necessary, and to engage others in conversation. They're always engaging others in conversation. Their contribution is super inclusive, and they tend to add positively to what other people said. Someone says something, and then to add your perspective, you might say, "Oh, great point, Joe. And here are my thoughts on this." So that makes other people feel validated. And at the same time, you command other people's attention because you're referencing what they said and adding your perspective on top of that and adding value. And they let their personality shine in these meetings. They're not holding back. They're not trying to be someone who they aren't. Now, when you are assertive, we're all born to be assertive, because being assertive is expressing ourselves. Right? That is where our personality is. When we're passive, we're suppressing our personality. When we're aggressive, it means we're insecure. Right? We're insecure. That is not part of our personality. Right? That's just something that we're trying to deal with in a negative way. In both cases, passive and aggressive, we're insecure, but we're coping with it in a different way. All right. So where do you fit? Where do you see yourself right now? Maybe it's a blend of both. Depends on the size of the meeting or who's in the meeting. Let's give you some more examples. So consider Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX and Tesla. So early in his career, Elon Musk was known to be a lot more aggressive in how he communicated. Now, over time, he shifted to more assertive. He doesn't shy away from sharing his ambitious ideas at all, ever, but he's also listening more to his team's feedback. This tends to happen a lot. Men tend to be way more aggressive than men. They tend to be more passive than those who've been around for a while, because they feel more confident, those who have been around for a while. So those dynamics also play, but that you can change. You can change from where you are to where you want to be. On the passive end, naturally, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, tends to be more passive. He was considered quite quiet, and he was like a reserved person, a reserved executive. He would sit back and he'd listen a lot in these meetings. And often that's really powerful as a senior person to sit back and listen. Though sometimes that's not the case. So being quieter doesn't mean that you're passive, right? As long as you're intentional about it. But over time, you did see Cook start to be more assertive and communicate his views proactively and engage others in conversation while respecting different viewpoints at the same time. Because people want to lead the guidance. They want to hear from senior people, from their leaders. So they can't just stay quiet. You want some direction. And it's important to state those directions assertively in those conversations. So the goal for all of us should be to be more assertive in meetings when we're conveying our ideas or thoughts or perspectives, and even engaging others in conversation. This is a style that is all about valuing your voice, valuing other people's voices, and respecting everyone in the process. When you're assertive, you're actively contributing to the discussions. You're sharing your perspectives freely, and you value other people's ideas. It's the perfect balance between adding value and listening, speaking and listening, not being afraid of disagreement, not being afraid of asking hard questions, and letting yourself shine. How can you do that? How can you share your ideas more assertively in meetings? There are several things that you can do, but you need to believe that what you have to offer is valid as anybody else in the room, no matter how senior or junior you are. You have to value your ideas. Even if they're half-baked, you need to understand that they're adding up to something. So don't wait for an idea to be perfect before sharing it. Sarah Blakely, I love her story, the founder of Spanx. She shared her ideas assertively and didn't wait for them to be fully formed, as she had this, it wasn't a fully formed idea of what the Spanx product could be, but it was the beginning of a $1 billion company, self-made from a half-baked idea, right? Half-baked ideas, when you share them with the world, that's when you get feedback. That's the purpose. No one wants to hear a fully fleshed idea because they can't buy in. The studies show that if you want to get people's buy-in for an idea, share a half-baked idea. Share a sketch, something rough, a draft, and people are way more likely to listen, to engage, and to want to support that idea. Second, don't let fear hold you back. I know it's scary sometimes. It's scary to disagree. It's scary to ask hard questions. Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook, is known for her assertive communication style. She asks a lot of tough questions in a very kind way. She challenges the status quo in a very nice way, but she does. Another thing that you can do to share your ideas assertively in meetings is to engage with other people. Because when you are assertive, you're listening and you're engaging others, right? Indra Yanoi, former CEO of PepsiCo, was known for encouraging a lot of open dialogue and always being willing to listen to other people, willing to learn from other people, right? So that's part of being assertive, is engaging other people, which means you also need to talk. Invite other people to the conversation. Hey, what are your thoughts? Hey, what do you think about this? Hey, I love your perspective on this. What about this? What do you think about this other thing? And then make sure that you are authentic and you let your personality shine. Just like Richard Branson, right? The founder of the Virgin Group. The man has so much personality, and that makes him memorable. That makes him respected. So when you let yourself shine, you will be more memorable. What you say will be more memorable. You'll have a trademark, whatever that is. All right, so let's talk about something slightly different, which is seeking clarification. This also happens, especially in one-on-one meetings, but it could be in a bigger meeting as well. So picture this: you're in a meeting and something is being explained. Maybe they're asking you for something and you don't quite understand it. Maybe it goes right over your head. Maybe you're new to the industry. Maybe you're new to the company. You don't quite understand what's going on. You're not sure exactly what that means for you. What do? Generally, a passive, nice people pleaser communicator tends to assume that everything important has been communicated. That the person that communicated, that made the request, that shared their idea, they said everything that they had to say. And therefore, they don't need to seek clarification when something is unclear, because then the problem is them. They should know something that they don't know, because it seems like everybody else understands what's going on. And the person who communicated or made the request or shared the idea, they probably have everything covered. And the passive communicator is scared of looking like they're not competent. If they ask that question, they're going to look like they're not very knowledgeable. And sure, it's going to feel good in the moment, right? Because asking for clarification can seem very uncomfortable. But when you don't, it's going to hit your performance. I mean, I've had this trouble with my team members when I was out on vacation and my boss would interact directly with them. They never asked questions. They didn't ask for clarification. Then they would do things that were not what my boss asked for at all. And then my boss would get really upset and view them as not being good listeners, not understanding anything, and not delivering. And so that was a problem. So the only thing that had to happen there, and where I spent most of the time when I was receiving a request from someone, which was part of my job, was to get requests from the leaders in the organization, is to really ask a lot of questions to understand, okay, what is it exactly that you need? Because most people are not very good at formulating the requests, the things that they have in their mind. They have this vague idea of what they want, and they don't know how to properly ask you or make a request or explain their idea. So we need to dig in. It doesn't seem that way, but that's generally the case. They don't know that much. Now, the aggressive communicator, on the other hand, might blame others for not explaining things in the way that was needed, that was proper. And they might make other people feel responsible for their own lack of understanding. And this is not cool either, because it just creates this hostility and doesn't allow for effective communication and productivity to happen. Now, the assertive communicator, that's where we want to be. They take responsibility for understanding what's important for their role there. They ask clarifying questions, as many as needed. And if they still don't understand, they rephrase what they heard. They repeat their questions. They're not going to blame other people for their lack of understanding. And they're always going to look for feedback to ensure that they're making progress on things. Then they deliver. Of course, with that attitude, they're going to deliver. So let's look at an example. Feynman, he was the Nobel Prize winning physicist. And obviously, the guy was super smart, super intelligent. He was known for being assertive when seeking clarification. This is very common for scientists in general. They're very good at asking questions. That's what they do. So in meetings, Richard would ask a lot of questions, even really basic questions, until he was able to understand the topic at hand. And then he would rephrase the explanations in his own words to make sure that he understood what other people were saying. I've been in so many meetings with executives where people were scared of asking the hard questions. And when the executive asked the hard question, which was a basic question, it wasn't a hard question. It was like, hey, I don't understand what this is about. Please, maybe it's just me here in this entire room, but explain to me, because I don't understand what we're doing. I don't understand this. I don't understand that. And then everybody else would start jumping in and saying, I don't understand either. And then he'd say, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you say something? And everybody was afraid. All these vice presidents, senior vice presidents, were afraid to tell the chief that they didn't know. So how can you apply this and be more assertive when it comes to clarification, right? You gotta take responsibility for understanding things. If something's unclear, don't assume that's been fully explained and that everyone else has understood it. Most of the time, they haven't. Most of the time, the person that's explaining or asking or talking about it didn't really think through it as much. It's not a full-formed idea. So be proactive and ask questions. Even the most stupid questions. Those are often the best questions. And then don't be afraid to ask those stupid questions. There's an old saying, the only stupid question is the one not asked. And you're going to be surprised how often your question is going to be in the mind of other people as well. Really smart people, what they do is they ask very simple questions. Very simple questions. All right. Then rephrase what other people said to make sure that you understood it properly. You'll be impressed. When you start rephrasing what other people said in your own words, your understanding, you'll see that they're going to immediately start to correct you because of two things. Not because necessarily you expressed it wrong, but they're going to realize that what they told you, when it's reflected back to them, is not exactly what they meant. Because when they're speaking, they're not quite hearing themselves that well. But when they're focusing on hearing what you said back to them, then they're going to see what's missing. They're going to understand, oh, I didn't convey this part. Let me share this because this is important, right? So it's super important to rephrase what others said. Not because you didn't listen to them properly, but because they need time to think about what they said and to be comprehensive around it and avoid And then remember that feedback is so important. And especially when you're going through something, you're working on a project, make sure that you get feedback regularly so that you can make sure that not only are you strengthening your relationship, but you're also making sure that the progress is going as expected, because people are not as clear as we think they are on almost anything. Even if they sound confident, they're not really sure what they're talking about sometimes. They're not sure what they're asking for sometimes. And if you don't want to be doing work that's not going to be used, if you don't want to be doing work that's going to be redundant, you have to take responsibility for it. Even if you're dealing with someone who's more superior, like who has 2-3 levels above you, and you think they know everything they're saying, and they know exactly what they're asking for, but they don't. So this is where you can offer suggestions. This is where you can ask for specific questioning is wonderful because it's also a way to add suggestions to improve something. Asking and seeking clarification is not a sign of incompetence. It's a sign of contribution. It's a sign of being smart and intelligent. It shows that you're curious. It shows that you're engaged. It shows that you're interested. It shows that you're committed to doing your best. If you find yourself in a meeting, in a conversation, nodding along, but feeling lost, not sure exactly what people are talking about, take a page out from Feynman's book, ask questions, seek clarification, and make sure that you fully understand what is being discussed. Listen, being more assertive doesn't happen overnight. It takes some practice. It takes some intention. So start with small steps. Share a little idea in your next meeting. Ask a question that you've been holding back on. Give feedback to a colleague. In the meeting room, what you have to say, even if it's imperfect, even if it's half-baked, even if it's not fully formulated, even if it's just an insight that you had in the moment, it matters. So be assertive. Engage with other people. Ask questions. Let your ideas shine, while at the same time allowing other people's ideas to shine as well. Thank you for joining me on the Speak Your Mind Unapologetically podcast. Until next time, my friend, always remember I keep a list of follow-up episodes that you will probably like in the description box below. I have tons of episodes on how to communicate effectively in a meeting environment. So check those out below and keep communicating, keep seeking clarity, and keep collaborating. Bye for now.